Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hello, everybody.
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer tips, insights, ideas, and examples for how small, emerging, and challenger CPG, consumer packaged goods, brands can build their business. Everything from determining if you're ready to grow, where to start, how to prove it online, how to go about securing distribution at a national retailer, driving your business with the end consumer, and how to go about finding an investor if that's important to you. The bottom line is, we would love to help you be successful by highlighting the many important factors that go into establishing and growing your brand.
Bruce and I have been working in CPG commercial operations for over 30 years, working on brands of all sizes. By commercial operations, we mean sales, marketing, trade marketing, new product development, broker and distributor management, new product development, brand M&A, and financing. As a part of our show, we bring our guests that are brand founders and leaders, agencies, Amazon specialists, sales agents, contract manufacturers, retailers, and investors to discuss their experiences and share their insights with the audience.
To keep up with the show, please subscribe to the Road to Retail podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Leave us a review and consider sharing the show with a friend or colleague that may benefit from the content. You can also check out our website to learn more at www.road2retail.com and follow The Road to Retail on LinkedIn. We would love to have you along for the ride. Big Chalk's Emerging Brands New Item Launch and Growth Toolkit transforms retail pitches into successful distribution outcomes. Instead of relying on a founder's story alone, brands gain consumer-validated proof across product concept, packaging, pricing, and marketing plans. Powered by advanced analytics and real-world benchmarks, it converts big ideas into retail-ready selling stories, fast and in a budget-friendly way. In just weeks, emerging brands gain the insights and credibility needed to stand out, lower buyer risk, and drive shelf success. Ready to replace hope with proof? Email emergingbrandswin@bigchalk.co and start building the story retailers can't ignore. Since 1994, the Emerson Group has been the trusted partner to brands, retailers, suppliers, and the CPG industry. Their people are CPG professionals and omnichannel commerce experts. They have built a fully integrated infrastructure with a suite of services and capabilities focused on launching and accelerating the growth of health, wellness, and beauty brands. Powered by their proprietary Omega AI data technology platform, which utilizes a brand's insights and data analytics to create a brand's go-to-market strategy, optimize their omni-channel distribution, build marketing plans, and optimize supply chain. The Emerson Group infrastructure and capabilities serve brands in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. To learn more, visit their website at www.emersongroup.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of The Road to Retail. We're glad you've carved out a little time to join us here today. Tracy Priest, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Excited about our episode today. It's just you and I, so we're going to hang out together and talk about all things trade shows today.
Oh yeah, so why don't you kick this off with a little more color around what today's topic is?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about attending a trade show, the do's and the don'ts, how to get the most out of a trade show because they can be expensive and it is an investment, not only in dollars, but in time. So you want to make sure that you're leveraging that investment, as well as, what is the purpose of the trade show? And again, best practices on how to leverage that industry trade show so that you can get some good exposure and maybe some sales.
Okay, so folks, we're going to kick this off with talking about the different types of trade shows. But first, we want to make a little bit of a delineation. There is a difference between a trade show and a conference. Right. So a trade show might be industry specific, like cookies or OTC health, etc., where a conference will generally attack a certain subject. So it will be rules and regulations in vitamins and mineral supplements, or it will be we're going to do a conference on women's health or GLP-1s. So a conference is much more about, yeah, there's networking, but it's much more about learning and
Right.
taking in information and attending breakouts and the different tracks. Whereas a trade show is more specific to you, your brand, your products, and educating people and giving out samples if your product is that way. So let's talk about trade shows primarily today. So they're industry specific. It can be health and wellness. It can be food and beverage. It can be themed. Right about now, maybe it's already too late. They're already doing holiday trade shows, like what's going to be in the stores at the holiday season. There's distributor trade shows run by regional distributors or the UNFIs, KHEs of the world. And then there are large retailers have their own quote unquote trade shows where it's like a manager's meeting where the suppliers generally help pay for the meeting. Quite frankly, you'll pay to get a table. They'll bring in the managers from their districts or their stores, and they'll have their own business, but then they'll also go out on the floor and walk the floor. And the buyers who do, say, um, food and beverage will go to the tables of the manufacturers that make food and beverage. And hopefully you'll spark some interest and get some follow-ups out of that. But we're going to talk about that in a little bit in terms of the different types of shows and what they're for. Tracy, anything to add here?
No, I again, just kind of different shows based on what you're really trying to accomplish, whether that's build awareness or go to a selling show. So it really just depends. It's really across the board, like you had laid out. So let's talk about how to decide what trade show to attend. So what we're recommending is maybe go as an attendee for a show that you're interested in. As an example, the Fancy Food Show is coming up this weekend in New York. And let's say you're interested in going. We really recommend going to the show and not getting a booth or being an exhibitor, but walking the show. See what it's about, see what retailers are there, what kind of manufacturers are attending, and things like that before you actually make the investment to actually attend the show because it is a big investment. There's samples, there's sell sheets, there's the booth, there's the charge for the booth space. So you really want to make sure that the show is the right fit for you and it meets your objectives. Sometimes brands are misled and they think, "Oh, I'm going to go to Expo West and place orders." As an example, well, Expo West in Anaheim the first week of March every year, 80,000 people, 4,000 booths. That is not a selling show. That is a show to uh, build awareness and make your brand, known to buyers that might walk by. So again, attend the show first, walk it, see who's attending, and then make a decision that you want to attend, for the following year.
Yeah, so to add just one thing there, if, as Tracy said, we always recommend if you're new to it, if you're new to the industry or you're trying a new item and you've never been to a trade show, go as an attendee first. You might be able to get someone to give you a badge or something if you have a supplier. And another benefit of doing that is if the trade show is held at the same place each year, pay close attention to the layout so you kind of know where you might want to be located. We're going to talk right now about the commitment. Tracy already talked about it. It can be a lot of money, which is why doing some recon up front, make sure you have the right show, make sure you know the booth size you're going to want, the location. So let's go through that a little bit. So how early do you have to commit? What do I need to bring? What do I need to create? Once you know you have the right show, there's usually things like early bird specials where you can commit to the show and save a little money versus being like last minute Charlie, where like 2 weeks before the show, you're like, hey, maybe we should go. Okay, you can probably still get in, but it's unless you're a bigger firm, that's going to be a real tough to pull off. So the other thing is think about the right size and location of the booth you want to secure. On the one hand, you may think, well, it's my first show, a really cheap booth with a card table and some skirting, and I'll have my daughter with some crayons make some posters. Okay, that's probably not the best use of your time and money. One of the things that I've done with brands that I've either worked on or we've helped is it's sometimes better to project bigger than you are and either get a booth a tiny bit bigger than maybe you should, but really worry about the location. If you can pick a booth near some of the bigger brands where you know there's going to be a lot of action, you're going to get a lot more people walking by, trying your sample, picking up your little information packet, scanning badges, etc. So don't get cheap and take the smallest booth down by the men's room next to the dumpster. Okay, that's not where you want to be.
I,
And then the other thing is you just want to make sure that your booth looks good.
mhm.
Action creates attention. So if you have it, have some video running on a laptop or a monitor if you can afford it. Have some, sales charts, especially if they're going up, because people are like, "Ooh, that's interesting." Bring if your product is one you can sample, bring a lot of samples, okay? Because if you have something that people can eat, drink, touch, smell, rub a hand cream on, there's nothing, it's expensive, but there is nothing more powerful than that initial sample. Okay, so those are some of my points. Tracy, what am I forgetting?
No, that's great. So two things I wanted to about where your booth was located. So getting the earlier the better. So if you're planning on Expo West next year, those booths will open up probably somewhere in September, October. But be in a main area. So be in the aisle is really the best. Like Bruce said, you don't want to be in the back where no one's going to go. You want to be on an aisle that's got some good foot traffic. The other thing I wanted to mention, Bruce, that we haven't mentioned before is when you attend a big show like an Expo West or you know, any other big shows, you have to be accepted. So you have to apply. And and Fancy Food Show, the one out west and the one out east, you have to apply and you have to be accepted. So the bigger shows are like that. So don't just assume because Expo West, for example, if you've got ingredients in your product that are not natural, they won't let you exhibit. Or if you have a product, let's say you have a skincare product, well, Fancy Food Show is probably not where you want to go. You don't want to apply there. So just realize that some of the bigger shows, you have to apply. There's an application process and be accepted. So just
So
wanted to
so
throw that.
Tracy, I'm sorry. So those are excellent points. So now that you've already started down this path, what's the strategy for
Mm.
attending a trade show?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things. One is the bigger shows, like I mentioned, you're building brand awareness. They are not selling shows. We had a somebody come talk to us not too long ago that said, "Well, I went to Expo West and I thought I was going to take get some orders." No, Fancy Food the same way. There's really not a way to take orders, and that's not what those shows are really for. Your distributor shows, as an example, those are selling shows. They'll give you an iPad. They'll have your items loaded on it. And then when a retailer comes by your booth, they'll say, "Yeah, I'm interested." And then you can place orders for certain times of the year. Bruce mentioned like holiday show. So KeHE, a big distributor, a couple weeks ago had their holiday show in Chicago, which they do every year. And so those are selling shows. But Expo West, um, Fancy Food Show, those are not selling shows. So, but some of them are mostly distributor show. And then you're meeting other potential for others that you can meet some other suppliers. Maybe there's contract manufacturers that are there at the show. I know they are at some of the bigger shows. And you may even run into an investor that may be attending the show and they'll stop by your booth. and want to have, some more information or set up a meeting after the show to meet with you so that you can present your brand for a potential investment. So I think you just have to know what is your objective and make sure that objective and strategy meets what the show is offering you.
So, Tracy, you touched on several of the shows that are out there, and you've attended both for businesses you've worked on and businesses that you've assisted a
Hmm.
lot more trade shows than me, and you rattled off a few. Are all the shows just, massive, or are there regional shows? And is there a database that would allow someone who's, say, selling gluten-free chocolate chip cookies, our favorite example, piñata? Is there a
Yes.
way to find out what shows they might want to look into attending if they're completely new to the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can do a Google search and find the shows. Also, you can look at message boards and things like that that have shows listed on there, the bigger ones. And then if you're in a distributor, UNFI has shows, KE has shows. Some of the regional distributors have shows. One is Chex, which is a local distributor up in the Northeast. They have a show every January up in Rhode Island called Chexpo, and their store managers or actually retailers that pull through checks will come and they'll walk around, and that's another example of a selling show where you can actually place orders. But I also want to give a shout out to our ECRM friends. That's a great, those I would consider those shows as well. That's speed dating with retail buyers. They do it by category, and that is a great way to get meetings directly with buyers. It's not You're not taking orders, but you're actually have an opportunity to meet with buyers and present your brand.
So Tracy, take 1 second there because I'm glad you brought up our friends at ECRM. Can you just perhaps go a little slower there and tell people what ECRM is and kind of the
Yes.
scope of the shows that they offer? I mean, I know
Yeah.
they do all kinds of different thematic
Yeah.
shows, but just take a second there, please.
Yeah. So they do. So again, it's you're signing up, you're paying. It's a total package deal. It's usually at a hotel in a major city like a Dallas or an Atlanta or a San Diego, and then they will do shows by category. So let's say gluten-free chocolate chip cookies. They're going to have a baking show or a cookie show that's just buyers for that category. So don't think the one thing that's great about ECRM shows is you're going to meet with the buyer that buys your category. So you're not going to be meeting with somebody that's like, oh no, I'm not the buyer. And the great thing is before you sign up, ECRM will tell you what retailers are going to be there. And then once you sign up, they will assign you a time slot. You can get a meeting for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 20 minutes. They vary in cost. But again, that total package is the room where you will be meeting. You'll get either a meeting room or a table, and then you will have your meetings, and then all the food and the hotel room and everything is all paid for there in one package. And it's really a cost-effective way to meet with a bunch of buyers and a lot of times they take place during their category review schedule, so it's perfect. And it's a lot cheaper than flying around the country to meet with, each retailer one by one.
Yeah, and that's a great point Tracy just made there, folks, is I've done a bunch of ECRM shows as a client, and when we first started, I didn't really understand it, but it was so efficient to go to one place for a day or two, and even if I paid for the short meeting package, I got FaceTime and names from 12, 15 retailers, and I got to make my pitch. And that really, my goal always was use this as a way to meet the right buyers, really hone in on a crisp pitch and hope for a real meeting, right? So
Yeah.
they're like, oh, Tracy, I really like that. Get on my calendar and let's talk about this more in depth. So that's what it's for. I'd rather meet 15 people in short meetings than spend 15 sets of travel T&E for meetings that may not be more efficient because they're still intro meetings, but instead of going to
Mhm.
12 places, you're going to one. So let's
Yeah.
talk about, a little bit more the difference between a conference and a trade show. So, there are many industry conferences that are very specific to your industry. So whether it's cookies, skincare, etc., as Tracy said, Google can be very helpful if you're a veteran of CPG or of the category you used to work in, but now you've broken off on your own. You already know the conferences or trade shows that you probably should be at or establish a presence. So they're more informative, a conference, because you're learning about what's trending, what's hot. Are there any regulatory changes coming down the path? Are there new ingredients that might be under review from the government? Yeah, that falls under regulatory, but you want to know that. The other thing is you get a chance to meet influential people and other companies within your industry. So while you're still competitors with these folks, it's good to build that network, and you find out that even the big companies have some of the same challenges that you have. And it also helps to start building your firm's name within the industry. No one's going to hear about you if you are invisible. So
Right.
a good friend of the show, Scott Emerson, once told us, he said, if you support your industry will support you. And you can only do that by showing up. Tracy, anything else on conference
No,
versus
that's
trade
that's
show?
great. Yeah. No, that's just great advice. So really conferences, to recap, is it really about learning and networking. And that's really why you would want to attend a conference versus a trade show. But let's talk a little bit about how do we you as a brand attract people to come to your booth. So as Bruce mentioned, samples are great. You want to get, especially if you're a food beverage brand or maybe even a skincare brand, you want people to try the product. So if your, as we mentioned, strategy is to get people to try your product, get some feedback, and also then make some great connections, whether that's an investor or a buyer, then getting samples. Now, again, don't overwhelm them. Sometimes the buyer will say, if it's not it's something that you can consume right there, maybe it's a skincare brand, and they said, hey, this is great. Can you send me, a sample after the show? Bingo. Now you've got that buyer's name and address and phone number, and now you can correspond with them. And that is a great way to say, hey, Anne, it was great meeting you at the show. Just wanted to let you know that samples are on their way. Once you get them, let's connect and let's talk about the brand. I'll give you a couple weeks to try the product, and then we can hop on the phone and talk about the brand, in more detail. So also understand though that the buyer, has a lot of ground to cover. So when they come by your booth, be short and succinct. Hey, nice to meet you. My name is John. This is my skincare brand. Here's a sample. I'd love to, connect with you. Can I have your card? Don't ramble and sit there and talk to them for 15, 20 minutes, because they're on a time clock to make sure that they're covering all the booths that you want to that they need to. So as Bruce mentioned, also maybe have some, you want your booth to be appealing, maybe have some monitors there that's got, some data on it, but also in another sense, don't bring a lot of samples and a lot of sell sheets, because shipping everything, and you don't want to ship things back because it's expensive to do so. So just bring, the right amount. And if you run out, it's okay. Hey, Mr. Buyer, we've had a great show. I ran out of samples, but can I have your card and I'll send you, some samples. Sometimes the buyer doesn't want to carry a sample home, or they don't want to carry a sell sheet. Hey, can I get your card? And I'll email you a sell sheet and some more information on my brand. And then also I will send you some samples now that I have a way to connect with you. So those are just a few things on, how to attract people to your booth. Bruce, did I miss anything?
One thing I would just like to build on if you run out of samples. So on the one hand, folks, you might be like, "Oh my God, we ran out of samples." Here's the silver lining. It's expensive, but tell that buyer hey, give me your information and I'll ship it to your office. So that does a couple of things for you. One, you're being helpful because they really don't want to bring 10,000 things home with them. If you give them presentations and this and that and the other, most of it's going in the garbage can, either in the convention center or in their hotel room. And if you give them presentations on a flash drive, they're going to delete the presentation and give it to their kid for their homework. But if you say you'll send them samples, you get their name and address, you get all their accurate contact information, you ensure that your product actually gets in their hands, whether it's to their sample room, their office, or some people might give out their home address if they're working from home a lot, and it opens the door for a follow-up contact, even if it's simply to confirm that they got the samples. So again, a bit of the silver lining there. Tracy, talk about the apps that are available so you can
Yes, yes,
figure out
yes,
who's
yes.
coming.
Yep. So most shows have an app. You can just go to the, Apple Store and download it. For example, I'm attending Fancy Food Show. They have an app, and it is a great way to see who's attending. It also has an outline of all of the um, educational programs that they will have, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So the app is a great tool. And one of the things that was told me not just this week is if you'll download um, the app into an whatever AI tool you use or download the exhibitors, it'll rank them by size. And or for example, if you're looking for something specific, some of these shows, like a fancy food show, they have contract manufacturers that have booths that make certain things. So let's say you're a pudding brand and you're looking for someone to make your pudding, type in pudding into the app and it'll tell you the brands that are there and maybe some of the contract manufacturers that you want to connect with. So the app is really a helpful tool. It also has a planning tool on that. You can schedule meetings and you can get contacts from it. So it's a great tool. I strongly recommend downloading the app. And again, most shows do have that.
So Tracy, live TV here, so hopefully your memory is better than mine. Who is the friend of the show that has the trade show tracking app that he's offered
Oh,
to our listeners?
yes. So that is Sam Joseph, and he has a company called VizMerch, and he has a trade show tracking app that you can use for the show, and you can track who you met with. You can take notes on it, and then you can get contact information, yeah, to put on the app, and then that way you have your notes to follow up after the show.
Right, and it's Viz, folks, VIZ, like zebra,
Yeah.
and it's a snappy little product. So
Yes.
let's now talk about the nuts and bolts. So now you've picked out the show you're going to, you know what you're going to do. How do I run an effective booth? Well, I don't know, Bruce. I'm going to go to the booth and hope people come by. Well, hope is generally not a great strategy. So let's try a couple of things. We're going to plant some seeds with you. Again, a lot of this comes down to budget, but these aren't egregious costs, especially if you've decided to attend. If you've decided to attend, you need to be all in, and not just you, but anyone else you bring. So try to have two or three people at the booth because you can get very busy, and many people only walk the floor once. And, people need lunch, they need to use the bathroom, they got to go get coffee. You want someone always available. As Tracy just pointed out, use the apps or old school print it out and throw it in your briefcase or whatever. Review the list of attendees frequently in the weeks leading up to the show because some people, especially retailers, they don't tip their hand till late because they don't want to get bombarded with meeting requests or, hey, can you walk by booth 214? I don't know. Maybe if I'm near booth 215, I'll go to 214. But keep checking that list because you'll find people that you want to talk to. Now, some will accept a real time that they'll come by and say hello or talk to you for a few minutes. Many won't, but they'll say things like, I'll try to swing by your booth at some point in the show. So you want to know and keep a list of who said that and just make sure people are always available because you don't know when they're going to come by.
Yeah.
Another thing that I learned over the years, get there early. As soon as you're allowed in, get in. and stay till the last bell because many retailers or investors walk the show late so that they're not bombarded with people the whole time. I cannot tell you how many spontaneous, high quality meetings we've had over the years because we were still working at 5 minutes before the show closed. So don't, if you're going to make this investment of blood, sweat, tears, cash, and time, work it. Invest in lead retrieval that's easy to scan the badges. The last thing anyone wants to hear is, oh, gosh darn it, this thing was working an hour ago. Make sure you know how to work those tools. Um, Also, make sure that your team uses the show offensively. So you're already trying to play some offense by meeting people and, depending on the show, maybe getting appointments, or as Tracy said, there are some shows that are selling. But make sure ideally at some point, everyone that you bring walks the show. You should see what's out there. You should see
Yeah.
what booth, even if it's not your category, what is that booth doing that is attracting so many people? You can also see what your competitors are doing, because they're at the show, and if they're handing out samples, just kind of walk by and get one. Usually they've just hired people to hand out samples. They're not worried about whether you're their competitor or not. And do some outreach early to the people that, because you're going through the list every week, right, folks?
Yeah.
Do some outreach when you see an interesting person that you'd really like to talk to. Again, they might not give you an appointment, but you've put them on notice and they said they're going to come by. Most people are good people, and if they say they'll come by booth 214, most of them will at least try. And the last two things, while they're a little archaic, they're still handy. Have plenty of business cards, but also make sure your contact info on your phone is current, accurate, and test it with a friend that, like, if Tracy wants my contact and you do the phone touch thing, that it loads properly.
Yeah.
You don't want to fumble these things that are fairly easy to fix if you invest a little time up front. Tracy, that was a lot. What have I forgotten that could be
Uh,
helpful?
let's talk a little bit about buyer meetings a little bit. So, at the bigger shows like an Expo West, a fancy food show, some retailers will take meetings. Know that you have to submit. So check your LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, there's always, hey, this retailer is going to be there. They're taking meetings. Here's the link to submit, and then you apply for that. But don't go into the show thinking, "Oh, I'm going to get all these buyer meetings." Buyers don't have time for meetings anymore because these shows are huge, like Fancy Food, like Expo West. Expo West, you can't even, it's so big now, you can't even walk it in a day. So what we recommend is if you know the buyer, shoot the buyer an email. Hey, if you're attending Expo West, would love for you to stop by booth 214. Here's my booth invite. Make a little PDF square, with your brand name and some branding on it. And we're at Expo West this year, and we're booth 214, and attach that to the email. It's a great way to connect. And if they have time, they will stop by. But don't go into these big trade shows thinking, man, I'm going to just, meet with 10 buyers. Again, the best way to do that is to apply for these meetings that the retailers are looking for. And then if you get one, then you've got, a good audience for 10, 15 minutes to go meet a buyer. A lot of the bigger retailers are doing that now at these shows.
Yeah, another thing that you can do that Tracy and I have done with Road to Retail, even, and with clients, is have an old school laminated card at your booth with a QR code. And that QR code, if they shoot it, maybe it takes people to a microsite with 2 pages of info on your new item. Or if it's a buyer, it takes them to like a 5-page teaser deck on your brand. But that's something, again, they don't want to collect 65 decks, even if they're
Yeah,
only 3 pages. That's still 200 pages that they're going to throw out. Trust me, they're not making it back to their office.
right.
So let's talk about, let's see here. If you end up at a conference, let's say, or these trade shows, if retailers or interesting suppliers, like someone who, let's say, really understands TikTok or managing affiliates or influencers in the social media world. You might be surprised, Tracy and I, our TikTok dances don't get many likes, but we're going to keep trying. But take advantage of these sessions that are
Mhm.
educational and learning.
Yep.
At NACDS, National Association of Chain Drugstores, at their annual meeting, large retailers do these 20 to 30-minute presentations about this is our strategy for the year. These are our priorities. In all honesty, these are things we didn't do so well last year, and here's what we're doing to fix it. Learn, always be learning. And then if you go to these other ones, you'll see this is how so and so brand built their business with TikTok Shop. Learn, take advantage of these things. Don't sleep in. Don't go have coffee with your college roommate. There's plenty of time for that. That's not why you paid to go to this show. Moving into one of our firm beliefs here, when you get back from the show, um, there's a lot of work to do, almost as much work as when you were at the show and preparing for it. It is imperative that you follow up quickly and accurately with the people that you met. And by this, we mean don't just say, "Hey, Tracy, it was great to meet you at Expo West. That band was awesome." Okay, great. I don't need that. But if it's like, "Hey, Tracy, it was great to meet you at Expo West. I thank you for your time discussing my X product as you requested. Here are our three samples and our product spec sheet. I'll call next Tuesday to follow." Be specific. Couple of reasons. One, it's more beneficial to you from building your business. And two, it shows you were paying attention. And how many of us have gotten the generic email and you know it was generic?
Yeah.
Or you know that ChatGPT wrote it and it said something that you just didn't talk about. So, really follow up with these, um, and take advantage, because as a small firm, if you're an emerging brand, you never know which of these contacts you make at a show will either really pay off or lead to another one. Because if I'm trying to get Tracy interested in my product, he might just say, "Look, Bruce, at dollar stores, we're just not going to sell that. But I used to work at X, and I'd be glad to connect you with my old colleague, Frank." That's how it works, folks.
Yep. So one thing about the follow-up though, for the bigger shows, like let's take Expo West and Fancy Food as an example. Expo West is always Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the first week in March. On Monday, don't write a follow-up email because everybody's getting back from traveling, being gone, taking care of things that they needed to while they were gone. So give the buyer or whatever contact a couple of days after the show. Example, Fancy Food Show is this weekend. It's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Don't write the email on Wednesday and say, "Hey, it was great to meet you. Can we get a meeting? Can I send you samples?" give give the buyer especially a couple of days to get back, empty their inbox, and then follow up. Because otherwise, your email is
Yeah,
not going to get read. It's going to go to
great,
the bottom.
great point. And as you've heard us talk about before, you don't want to be needy, and you want to have a little self-awareness. So Tracy's point is excellent. These people have just been bombarded for 3 days. First off, they probably need like 2 days to just sleep,
Yeah,
and then they'll start sorting through things. But kind of know your place. That doesn't mean don't be, there's a difference between persistent and aggressive. I think
yeah,
that this is a case where you want to be persistent, but with some self-awareness. If you try to tackle your buyer 10 minutes after he or she gets back from the show, they're going to be like, "Man, this guy's a dingbat." I'm not going to deal with them. They don't have any clue as to how the world works.
yeah, absolutely.
All right, Trace, let's roll into some closing points here. What do you got?
Yeah, so if you've gone to a show and you walked it and you're like, I think this is a good fit for me, then a lot of the shows, as I mentioned, like an Expo West or Fancy Food, they open up several months in advance. But if you're at the show and there's an opportunity to go ahead and book a booth, then sometimes shows have early bird specials. I know that Expo West does. So they say if you book your booth between this date and this date, it costs X. And then after that date, it costs Y. usually more expensive. Again, another tip is for bigger shows like Expo West, they open up rooms for you to book at a certain amount of time. You want to make sure that you do that because the hotels in and around Anaheim Convention Center sell out extremely quickly. The same thing with Fancy Food Show in New York. So plan your travel very far in advance and get a hotel room, as close to the conference as you can. But again, the quicker you can book a booth, the better off that you are, and then you can start your planning from there.
Yeah, I would just add a couple of things here as we start closing. A lot of these shows and conferences, there are training or orientation
Yes.
tools for first-time attendees. Some of these, they'll have a special orientation session where they'll be like, this is when we have lunch, this is when it opens, this is when you can pick up your supplies that you shipped here. Others will assign you a mentor or a veteran from a company that's been to this show 10 times, and they'll kind of show you the ropes. If those are offered, take advantage of it. I also can't stress enough, if you've spent all this money and if you have the time and manpower, make sure you're attending these information education sessions, whether it's about industry topics, retailers speaking. And then the other thing I would add, if you're new to the whole trade show game, a good place to start, as Tracy referenced earlier, is with ECRM. If you're in the CPG world, go to their website and look at the list of the shows that they offer and see if anything there is a good match for your brand. And if it's of interest, send them an email and get a little bit more detail from them. But again, that's a good way to get in front of multiple retailers. If you're ready to start selling, that's a good way to get in front of multiple retailers with one event with 2, maybe 3 days out of office.
Yeah.
Tracy, anything else here?
Yeah, I wanted to add on the training part. So if you're attending a distributor show like a KE Unify or Chex, as I had mentioned, there is an ordering system. It's usually an iPad, and it'll have, the DCs that you're in with your code numbers, and then the retailer can actually place an order. They have training for that on how to use that iPad. Make sure that you attend one of those training sessions the day before the show. The worst thing you can do is say, "Oh, I'll figure it out," and then a buyer comes, they want to place an order, and you can't figure it out. That's embarrassing. So really know how to use the order taking system and attend that educational part that they offer. So that's
Yeah,
my part.
another thing, folks, that you might want to consider either to attend or to sponsor is, if you have the budget and you have some scale, you know, try to have some sort of social hour to attract, whether it's buyers or industry suppliers if you're looking for ingredients, or packaging people, and you might be able to team up. If you have a brand and your packaging firm is there, or an ingredient supplier, it's just another way. One, you meet more people. You never know who will wander into these things. So
Yeah.
that's another way to do it. And if you try to go it yourself, yeah, it can get expensive. But we've had many inquiries over the years of people teaming up, and suddenly there's a nice little cocktail hour for 40 people and 4 companies sponsor it, so it doesn't break the bank. And then the last thing I would say, again, if you've made the commitment of time, money, blood, sweat, and tears to go to a show, work the show from start to finish. Don't be trying to be the first people at the happy hour. Don't be late. Work it and get your money's worth. That's all I have. Tracy, any closing
Yeah.
thoughts before we
Yeah.
roll to
Closing
the
thought
big
is,
finish?
yeah, use these trade shows as a networking opportunity. So these bigger shows, Fancy Food Show, Expo West, have all kinds of events that are hosted by suppliers, brands, you name it. So when I know it's a long day standing on your feet from 10 to 5 or 10 to 6, whatever it is, don't go back to your hotel room and order room service. Find those networking events. You never know who you might meet. You might run into a buyer for all you know. You might run into an investor for all you know. You might run into a contract manufacturer. So use these shows as opportunities to network within the CPG industry.
Yeah, one quick example, a guy who looks a lot like Tracy Priest went to a hotel and he was grabbing a quick bite before going to a networking event, and the guy grabbing a quick bite right next to him was a buyer from a large retailer located in a state that starts with A. So you
Yeah,
never know who
you
you
know,
will meet.
that's exactly right.
All right,
Exactly right.
Tracy, the big finish, brother.
Absolutely. This has been great, Bruce. Audience, I hope you've enjoyed it today, learned a little bit about attending a trade show, and continue us to follow us on our Spotify channel, our Apple channel, as well as YouTube. We post every Tuesday on LinkedIn. And if you want to see all the episodes in one place, check out our website, www.road2retail.com. Thanks for joining us today.
Good luck out there, folks.